Basil thrives in our yard. No matter the season, we can find a happy spot for it to thrive in. In this video, we'll walk you through everything you need to know to grow your own thriving basil plants. From its ancient history and benefits to practical tips on how to start seeds, watering, companion planting, and how to attract pollinators. So let's get started. Earlier this year, we had a huge basil harvest. To see what we did with it, make sure to check out our video, How to Preserve Fresh Basil. I'll put a link to it in the description. And that's one of the benefits of growing basil at home. It's so easy to grow, you'll have enough to store for later. And there are a wide variety of basils available to the home gardener that you'll rarely, if ever, see in the grocery store. This African blue basil is a perennial. It smells wonderful and attracts pollinators to the garden. The whole plant is edible and it's great in teas. Today we're starting lettuce leaf basil and Thai sweet large leaf basil. To grow basil from seed, you'll want to start about 6 to 8 weeks before the last frost and then succession plant every 6 weeks. Use a light, well-draining soil mix and scatter the seeds lightly on the surface. Before we do that, let's add Bt granules to our potting soil. This will reduce gnats, those annoying little bugs that erupt from your indoor gardening area. So we'll add some granules to our water reservoir as well as to our container of soil that we will be using to cover our seeds. Next up, we'll label our first 2 columns of our seed tray and we'll leave the last 3 empty for succession planting later. Now we're ready to add our seeds. They're tiny, so we're just going to spread them evenly over each cell and then press them into the surface gently to avoid burying them too deep, but we want them to make good contact with the soil. Another benefit of growing your own basil is that it makes an excellent companion plant for most veggies. A classic pairing is basil and tomato. So our Italian style lettuce leaf is perfect for that. Basil originated in Southeast Asia, where it's been cultivated for thousands of years. In ancient cultures, basil often symbolized love and good fortune, which I understand because the smell of basil instantly takes me to my relaxed, happy place. And basil goes great in containers, so when it starts to cool off, you can bring that joy inside. All right, now that we have our seeds planted, let's go ahead and cover them very lightly with potting soil. And we're just gonna press the soil down to make sure there's contact with the seeds. They're tiny, so they don't need a lot of coverage, and they do like a little light to help stimulate germination. For the best results, use a nutrient-rich soil with a slightly acidic to neutral pH of 6 to 7. As they grow, we can add in a bit of compost or dilute organic fertilizer. All right, now it's time to mist the soil with water and place your seed tray in a warm spot under grow lights. We want to keep the soil consistently moist, but avoid overwatering, as the basil seeds can easily rot. Add a seed heating mat if the air is still cool. These are warm weather plants, and they will appreciate a little warmth. Within 7 to 10 days, you'll see the tiny seedlings start to emerge. After a few days, you'll see the true leaves start to emerge, and it'll be time to thin your seedlings that are not competing for light and become as tall and spindly. All right, it's been a few weeks, and our seedlings look great. They're very healthy, and are starting to get too big for the container. You can see the younger, smaller seedlings where I added in new seeds in the weeks following our original planting. For these seedlings, I let the tray dry out a little bit just so it's easier to pop the seedlings out without damaging their roots into their new soil. And the soil I'm using is the same that we use for our original seed tray to avoid transplant shock. And this is Fox Farm, and I'll put a link to all the supplies I'm using in the description. And while you're there, make sure to sign up for our newsletter. Now, basil loves sunlight, so I've already started the hardening off process. They've been out from under the indoor lights for a while, and I just bring them out in the morning for an hour or two of indirect sun and then bring them back in. When they're ready to go out, they should be able to get at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sun each day. Without enough light, the plants might grow tall and leggy. So you want to make sure you give them a sunny spot or a very sunny windowsill if you're inside, but if you're going to do inside, I would recommend a grow light for them. Alright, it looks like all of our seedlings survived their transplant into larger containers quite well. They put on a lot of new growth, and a few of them are starting to look a little leggy, especially the Italians and some of the Thai basils. So I'll show you how to trim back the tips for bushy growth for the biggest plant, or I should say leaf harvest, possible throughout the growing season. So here's our lettuce leaf basil, and you can see it already has large fluffy leaves, but it's all on one stem. So let's go ahead and trim it back so it has an opportunity to branch out like these bottom leaves at the little nodes. Of course, we'll keep trimmings to use for dinner this evening. Nice fresh basil. That's the best part. When you start growing, you almost immediately start having herb to use in the kitchen. And now the same with our Thai. You can see it's definitely getting long and it's super healthy. I'm really happy with it. And you can already see the small leaves starting to grow at each nodule, at each node. So we'll just trim it back. We don't want to go all the way down. We want to make sure there's enough leaves to produce energy and food for the mother plant. And basil isn't just tasty, but it's also really healthy. It's packed with nutrients and antioxidants that support overall well-being and act as anti-inflammatories. Now, our trimmings here today aren't enough for a pesto, but I will use them tonight raw as a salad. And those Italian lettuce leaf basils are pretty neat when they get big. Those leaves can get big enough to stuff with cheese or a mix of vegetable and other herbs. It's a pretty neat plant. The Thai I like to wilt under like a warm piece of meat or fish or tofu. Alright, and we'll give them a drink of water to help them recover from the pruning and then take them back outside. Alright, it's been a couple of weeks, and here are our basil plants after being pruned. They're starting to look much more bushy, and you can see where they branched out from when we trimmed the stem back, and the stem dies back a tad bit, so you always want to cut a little above where, probably about half an inch above where you want the branching to occur. And now they're nice and hardened off and ready to go into the garden. Now, I always plant my basil and most of my plants in mixed plantings in containers or even in the ground. And basil is an excellent companion plant for tomatoes, peppers, and lettuce. It helps repel harmful pests as well as enhancing the flavor of neighboring crops. Now, basil is pretty easy to plant. We're just going to dig a hole about the same depth as it is in the pot and transplant it directly in, and it'll be just fine. Now, basil can have their share of pests, mostly the common ones like aphids and whiteflies, and sometimes attack basil plants. You can usually manage that with a gentle spray of water, or you can use an organic insecticidal soap. But they do grow fast, so if it gets overrun, you can just pull it out and put in your next run of succession plants. If you live somewhere humid, powdery mildew can become an issue. Just ensure good air circulation around your plants and avoid wetting the leaves when watering to prevent the fungal issues. And we're all done. We made it from seed to planting our seedlings in the garden. And let's look inside. We have another set of seedlings starting. Basil, of course. And more lettuce leaf and sweet Thai leaf. All right, thanks for hanging out with us today while we started some basil from seed. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave your questions or tips in the comments below. All right, happy gardening and see you next time.